Welcome back, everybody, to 3 Point Lines here on the Parlay. I'm your host, Luca Rosano, alongside my co-host, Noor Zainab, and we are back with a special edition of the show. We're not going to be covering the NBA today. We're going to be covering NCAA. Yes, we're going to be looking at college basketball on the men's side, as we're going to be taking a look at the biggest matchups tonight. All of these teams are ranked, and they will be going head-to-head. We got some Big Ten matchups, some Big 12 matchups, etc., as we will be making our picks against the spread. My percentage with picking NBA games is 54%. Noor is at 52%. And yeah, we're going to see if we can make some magic with these picks with NCAA. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it, Noor. And we're going to start with the first game. We got Michigan State taking on Iowa. And Iowa here, a 6-point favorite.
Yeah, that should be a pretty good game, eh? The Spartans have lost, I think, four of their last five, including two straight road L's. Whereas Iowa has only lost one of their last five, and they've won against Ohio State on the road, where Spartans have lost. Iowa's defense will be, I think, too much for Spartans here since they've averaged 90.5 points in their last four games, whereas Michigan is only averaging around 112.8 points per 100 possessions compared to Iowa's like 119.6. And Spartans also missing some key players here, and they will be in a shooting slump as they have been, just like their scoring leader, Gabe Brown, who's only scored 5 points last game. So I'm not sure how that's going to fare out for this game here, if they can really bounce back. So I like Iowa to cover this one. What about you?
Well, here's a fun fact. My favorite team is
Oh,
actually Michigan State. So I really like this team. I've always been a Spartans fan. I don't know why. I've always liked Michigan as a whole. Like, I have a couple sweaters. Don't ask me like the backstory to that. I just kind
is
of
it like
picked a
a
college team as a kid. So I'm taking Michigan State here. But you look at their offense; it has struggled, like you said. They've been, plagued with this offensive struggle throughout the year. It seems they're just averaging over 66 points per game after posting nearly 75 a night. But then once February's hit, the woes have started with this Michigan State team. But I am backing them +6 here, mainly because they are a strong defensive team. They're 57th in the nation in adjusted defensive efficiency. So I think they're going to have some success there. And also, you look at the Spartans, I think they're going to own the glass here. I mean, Iowa is 148th in the nation in rebounding rate, while Michigan State sits at a cool 30th. So that, I think, is going to be a big time advantage for them to crash the glass, get some second chance opportunities. And that defense, I think, is going to make this game close. So I'm taking Michigan State here +6. I think they find a way to keep this game close. And I wouldn't be surprised if they even win this game.
Wow, you really are Michigan boy, Luca. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next one of the night. It's gonna be Oklahoma versus Texas Tech, where they are favored by -9.5. Pretty big spread for an NCAA game. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to lay the points here, though. I like Texas Tech
Ooh.
-9.5. The Sooners are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games, following a straight up loss. In the series, the home team is 11-3-1 against the spread over the last 15 meetings. Oklahoma has gone just 2-7 over their last 9 road games this season. So I like the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who are 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 home games against opponents with road winning percentages of less than 400 to take it here. So give me Texas Tech and that big number. I think they will cover in this Big 12 matchup.
I think you just convinced everyone. And you're right, honestly. The way that Oklahoma started off the year was pretty great. They won about 12 of 3, and they have beaten the likes of Arkansas, Texas Tech, Florida, Iowa. So they were off to a pretty heavy start. But as of recently, they've lost about 10 of 12. And going up against this put together Texas team that's already going to be deep and they have their stuff figured out, they're going to have something to really overcome here. And that's why I think this is a comfortable spread for Texas to cover. It is a pretty big spread in my understanding for when it comes to NCAA, but I think this is where TT is a team that can do it against Oklahoma. So give me Texas as well.
Okay, so from one big spread to another, this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah.
Another Big 12 matchup. We got Kansas State taking on Kansas. The Jayhawks are favored by 12.5.
So I will not be laying the points here, actually. I think this is a two teams that have an intense rivalry going at each other. And if that's the case, if you know anything about rivalries and how they date back, any other team is going to come through and they're going to put up a fight. And that's also, I think the Wildcats in their first meeting had led that meeting by 15 points. And they can use that same kind of competition here. If they were able to lead that by 15 points they can cover the spread here. They may not win, but they can for sure lose by less than 13 points. And Jayhawks do have some shaky games because of their lack of defense, and Kansas State has been playing a lot better. So I think this should be more of a close matchup than people think it might be. And like I said, they might not win, but they can keep it close because they have a pretty strong defense and they're very dominant on the perimeter as well. And that's kind of where they can make their name and their bread and butter to defend the other team at the three. And Wildcats have beaten the likes of Texas Tech and Texas recently while they were underdogs on the road. So I don't see why they can't do the same thing here. So yeah, give me Kansas State. What about you?
Yeah, this is one of my best bets on the TikTok that I just made for the parlay. I like Kansas State
Oh,
in this rivalry. I always like when these two teams meet up. It's going to be a ton of fun. And you look at the Wildcats; they're going to be confident that they can at least compete against this Jayhawks team that is right now number 5 in the nation after leading by as many as 15 points in the first meeting. So they actually had a really good last game against them. The Jayhawks still have had some shaky games, namely on the defensive end. And Kansas State is playing very confident right now, and they look like a team that could get into March Madness, and they could be one of those dark horse sleeper teams that could potentially make some noise. You look at Kansas State; they could keep this game close thanks to that strong defense that has allowed only an efficiency rate of 47.2% from the field, and they have been so dominant from the perimeter. You know, they close out threes, they guard you, they do not let you have any easy looks, and the Wildcats are exceeding expectations right now in the Big 12. So I think there's a lot of value with taking them here against their arch rival. I don't expect them to win this game outright. That would be a huge upset. But like you said, I think they will lose by under 12 and a half points. So I will take them here.
cover the spread. Now, do you have any thoughts on Villanova versus Connecticut, where Connecticut is favored by -2.5?
Yeah, I like Villanova here. You look at the Wildcats; they've won 5 consecutive games and 8 of their last 9 outings overall. So they're coming in as one of the hottest teams, and that actually included an 11-point win over UConn in their first meeting. The Huskies, they've posted 3 straight victories themselves, but they're just 4-3 straight up across their last 7 games, while going abysmal 2-6 against the spread in their last 8. So this is a team that they've had their fair share of struggles, and going up against a talented Wildcats team, I think the Wildcats are ultimately the better team and they will come out with the victory. So I will take the plus 2.5 here.
Yeah, this one's kind of tough, eh? It's you got a pretty close spread here, and these are two teams that can bring on a show any given night. But I think for me, it comes down to who's available. And as of right now, Villanova might not have Colin Gillespie or Justin Moore, and that's their top two players. And if they're not there, I think this is something that Connecticut can make the adjustments for, and they can be the difference maker for this series if you're not having the two best guys on your team. And just because it's so close that I think that this is something that Connecticut can cover, especially if they're missing their top guy. So I'm actually going to go with Connecticut here and go with the favorite. We're
Nice. I like it.
disagreeing for the first time quite a bit, Luca. I'm not sure if that's just the NCAA effect here, but
Yeah,
wow.
first disagreement. I think
I
we
know.
just like each other's picks that much.
Yeah.
Okay, next game. We got another big spread here. Tennessee minus 10.5 against Missouri. This is an SEC matchup.
Yeah, what's up with the big spreads in NCAA, eh? Missouri is coming off a rough weekend going against an intense Tennessee team. Sorry, and going up against an intense Tennessee team is not going to be fun for them, and it's going to be. But this is too many points for these two teams that are that can keep it pretty close. Usually, Tennessee has been struggling with dry spells offensively, especially when they're on the road. And Missouri actually is more of a defensive minded team, and I kind of noticed that with NCAA. My knowledge is not as intact when it comes to NCAA, but what you can kind of pick up from this league currently is that they are paying a lot more attention on the defensive end. And I'm not sure if that's just how the league is turning out to be, and that's where the traction is going to be in the future. But seeing teams play defense makes people like us and people who watch the Raptors and people who watch the leagues who actually bank quite a bit on defense see that it's building up from the ground up at this point. So I think having teams that have that defensive mentality and that can stop points and stop the other team's best players, it gives them a good chance every single night, especially when you have a big spread, because at that point, you don't really have to win. You just have to cover that spread. So in this scenario, I think this is what Missouri can do. They can have the defense to go against Tennessee, and I think that they can limit them under 11 points. So give me Missouri. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you again. I like Tennessee minus 10 and a half. You look at Missouri, they are not good at scoring the basketball. Their defense is really good, but the Volunteers, this is an offense. They did have a hiccup their last time out, but they average 8.8 3-pointers made per game. And I do expect them to bounce back from a 48-point dud that they had the other night. As you look at Missouri, that defense is solid, but that offense is just too sloppy for me. I don't think they're going to keep this game close. They are actually 313th in turnover rate, and they struggle from the perimeter. They make only about 5.1 made threes per game, and they just don't have that same offensive talent to compete with a Volunteers team that is fighting for the top spot right now in the SEC. So this is a big number, like you said, to cover. And usually I do side with defense in these battles, especially when looking at Missouri. They have been sound at the defensive position all season long. But I just think this is going to be a statement game for Tennessee. They're coming off of a poor outing. They got a big matchup this weekend against number 3 Auburn. I hope they don't look ahead to that matchup. I hope they use this game as a tune up for that game. So I think Tennessee will put this game out of reach early, and this will be a blowout win for them as they head into that big matchup against Auburn later on in this week.
Interesting. Now we have Arkansas versus Florida, where Arkansas is favored by -1. Thoughts?
Yeah, the Gators have struggled prior to pulling it all together just in time to beat Auburn, but they're now going to be taking on a disciplined, very deep Arkansas squad. I really like this team. The Razorbacks have been one of the hottest teams in all of college basketball. They've covered the spread in 8 straight games. They have won 11 of their last 12 games overall, and this is one of the more experienced teams in the SEC. And when you talk about March Madness, experience is going to be huge, especially when you go up against teams that have a lot of first time players experiencing the dance. And this is an Arkansas team, sticking with the theme of defenses. They love to rely on their defense. And I think this is a team that can go into Florida on the road, rely on that defense, and just scrape together one of those wins en route to covering that -1. So I do like Arkansas in this spot. I think it's going to be a fantastic game, though. One of the best games of the night overall.
This explains the spread here, right? I think you're completely right. I think this is you put it together perfectly. This is a Gators team that has been struggling, and you put that team against a team that's been pretty disciplined. It's a deep team as well, and they've, like you mentioned, they've been winning like crazy. They've won 11 of their last 12, and if you want to talk spreads, they've been covering the spread as well. 8 straight is something to talk about, and if that's the case going up against a Florida team right now with the spread so close to, this is something that they can pull out on. And like you mentioned, experience is everything. Having the experience and having the defense at the same time too, because I think again, nature of every game at this point is going to be defense to put yourself in the spot to win. And if that's the case, then this could be Arkansas' spot. So yeah, give me Arkansas as well.
All right, then the final matchup we got here, another SEC clash. We got Alabama -4.5 taking on Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Vanderbilt has been playing pretty decent recently. But Alabama's style of play isn't too much up there, isn't up their alley by a lot. I think that they will give them quite a bit of trouble. Alabama can push the pace, they can limit their rim protectors, and I think Vanderbilt would have a pretty hard time matching Alabama's offensive load. When you have that kind of firepower, you need to be able to at least defend it or reproduce that kind of impact on the other end. And I think Alabama's shot selection is going to be the key factor here. If you're not relying too much on the 3-point shot and you're able to move the ball around, which they are, and they can kind of get to their spots a lot more easily now that they don't really rely on the 3-point shot. I think that gets you ball movement and it gets you the most efficient shot. So I feel comfortable with Alabama staying the favorite here. What about you?
All right. So one thing we've learned from the show is we disagree on a lot of NCAA picks. So we'll see if that favors one of us over the other. Because yeah, I'm going with Vanderbilt here. I think this is going to be
Oh man.
a nice backdoor cover. They're going to keep this game close. Alabama hasn't really impressed me with their head coach Nate Oates since he has become the head coach. They're only 9-19 against the spread when coming off a game in which they gave up 80 or more points, and that happened in their previous game. And his team right now, they're underperforming defensively, and that's one of the main reasons why I can't trust them in this game. And also, you look at the Commodores; they have covered in each of their last 6 games, and have won 4 in a row when playing a home team. So I just think that this is going to be, a game that Vanderbilt is able to keep it close. They are able to test Alabama a little bit. So yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, Alabama overall, they have been really, really good, but they are just 6-14 against the spread as a favorite this year. And that's not enough for me to trust them in the spot. So I think this is going to be a spot where Vanderbilt does keep it close. 4.5 is not that big of a spread, but it's still enough where we can see, Vanderbilt cover that in less than 2 minutes. We see it all the time with college hoops. You never know where you're going to get up into the final minute. And I think this is going to have a big time feel atmosphere with a crazy crowd involved. So I like Vanderbilt.
Well, I think our producer figured out the recipe here. If you want us to disagree and fight, put on NCAA. That's what we're gonna do. And you know what? We will continue that going on tomorrow because we'll also have the NCAA spreads for tomorrow night as well. Up until Thursday, when basketball is back and the NBA players are back in town playing post All Star basketball, which for some people is real basketball. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining Luca, Rosano, and me, Noor, Zainab. And you know where to find us out of all of our sources at the Parlay, as well as Parlay TV. And we'll be here at the same time every day, every week. Take care.